These fans don't fit on here. Clearly is not going to happen. For about a year, I've been telling myself I'll finally upgrade my computer to the new Intel CPUs, the new AMD CPUs, and then the new NVIDIA graphics cards. But unfortunately, supply and demand is a terrible, terrible thing, and I've not been able to get anything that I truly, truly wanted. But I do need to get an upgrade here, and so that's what we're going for. So we did settle for the i9-10900K, a lot of cores, a lot of threads for editing video, which is something I'm doing more and more and more. And so this upgrade is going to be a beautiful thing. We're going to be using the Asus Prime Z490A motherboard, a great motherboard. You can tell we're going for a bit of a white theme here with the Lee & white case here. A very common case, the Dynamic 11, Dynamic 11, something like that. We also have something we're going to be doing special with this build is very much a Corsair cooling. We're really going to be trying out the Corsair Hydro X series. So we have the XC7 white version of the CPU block. We have the nice pump reservoir combination here, the XD5, of course RGB. We got some white tubing from Primaflex. Only reason I didn't get the Hydro X stuff is because it was cheaper. That's the only reason why. We are, of course, using the Hydro X radiator. One thing, of course, to note, when you are doing water cooling, you don't want to mix metals and all that kind of thing. And this way I know for a fact everything is going to be okay. We got some fittings here, and again, I really wanted the RTX 3080. Unfortunately, they're just not in stock, or you just can't find them easily without getting bots and things, which has just been a pain. So we're going to be settling here for my 1080 Ti, my existing graphics card, but we're hoping to upgrade this in the future, and then in the future get a bigger rad, and also join this in the water cooling system. So this is the system we're going with. We got a 970 Evo Plus from Samsung for some storage. We have another M.2 I'm using right now in my current build that we'll swap in as well. And so overall, this should be a pretty fun build. It's something I've been looking forward to doing for quite a while. I've had some of these parts since October. I just have not been able to get the parts I've wanted, and now with the new 11th gen Intel right around the corner, the 10th gen have really been falling in price, and so I'm looking forward to this big upgrade here. So let's get to it. So here is our motherboard, again the Asus Z490 Prime. You can see we're going a bit of a white theme here, some of the white accents. Maybe we'd be doing a bit of a white, blue, green theme here. Again, this motherboard, it has the 4 DDR4 slots for our RAM, Corsair Vengeance RAM, which it did not show earlier. We're still not quite at PCI 4.0. That's something that will be coming with Intel 11th gen and the 500 series boards, but it's not that much of a difference for my 1080 Ti here. We got, of course, 2 M.2 slots we'll be using for our 2 M.2 drives. Yes, just fall to the ground, that's what I wanted. So of course you have your Intel CPU right on here, a beautiful, beautiful thing. The Intel 10900KF. The 10900KF and the K are virtually the same thing. The only thing is the KF does not have graphics integrated on the CPU, and therefore you'll need a dedicated card, which I'm using anyway. For Intel, of course, you're gonna lift this hammer out to the right side, lift it up, and that'll expose your CPU socket right there. Want to, of course, be very gentle with that. Those pins are very, very sensitive, and messing one up can lead to some issues going forward. With this motherboard, you're going to be looking for the little dot there in the corner. That is where we're going to be matching up the small little diamond here on the CPU. We're going to be matching those up. The other way is to look for the little notches on the socket. You'll know which way to go. You'll simply drop that in, apply no insertion force. You don't want to force that thing in there, just kind of drop it in there like so. You can wiggle it a little bit just to make sure it's kind of firmly in place. We'll close the socket there, put the arm back down, and then the little protective thing here will come right off. And you want to make sure you keep this. You don't want to get rid of this guy or lose it, because if for whatever reason your motherboard has a problem where you have to return it because it's broken, you will need this. Most manufacturers do require you keep this and send it with that on it. So again, we are going for the Corsair Hydro series. Again, this is the C7 or XC7 RGB white version of the water block. And this is what we will be installing on the motherboard here. And so inside the box, you have a little manual kind of showing exactly how to do it, a little guide and all that information. Again, this does work for Intel and AMD sockets, both 11, 5X, so pretty much every generation of Intel since at least Sandy Bridge. And of course you have AM4 as well for the new AMD CPUs, the new Ryzen CPUs. A little bit of warranty information included with that as well. We will open up this bad boy. For the installation process, just some things to note. There is a little Corsair ship on the bottom of the block. Of course, you want to make sure that's not upside down when you install it, so that will be on the bottom of the motherboard. It does also have pre-applied thermal paste, so you don't have to put on thermal paste of your own. Unless maybe you bought this used or are using this again, you will have to reapply thermal paste. But if you're using it for the first time, you don't need to put thermal paste on there. And then of course you have the backs for the water block. These will go on the back of the motherboard. Which one, of course, depends on which type of CPU you have. For Intel, we're using our square guy here. We have all the mounting screws, mounting brackets, and things like that. And overall, it's a pretty easy install. And then finally, you have the little header here for all the RGB lights, which very, very important, obviously. So obviously with the Intel back bracket here, there's kind of a rubberized side and a purely metal side. You want to make sure that the rubber side is going on the back of the motherboard here. You definitely don't want to short anything out here on the back. So that'll go just kind of like so for now. Then of course you're going to be taking some of the screws and things in your little back packet here. Again, everything is included that you will need. Inside the package, it'll come included with kind of these screws with this thing on top. For the first parts of the installation, you actually need to screw off the top part. These will be used later. You just need kind of these mounting screws first. Take the shorter end of the screw here, kind of put it through, and then you'll match it up with one of the corners of the back plate. You don't want to make it too tight because you'll have to do all the other ones too. Again, I'd recommend doing it in corners, so you have to take the top part of these screws off. We'll do the opposite corner this time. You do, on the screws themselves, you put the washer on the short end. You put the washer on the short end of the screw here, and then you'll screw it into the back plate. You'll do that for all of these standoffs. All right, so obviously we have our Corsair water block here. I want to be careful with the thermal paste on the bottom. There is a protective plastic thing on for now. Again, in terms of installation, I want to make sure the ship is on the bottom. With that said, pretty annoying to have this cable kind of hanging out, but it is what it is. So what we're going to do is take off that back blacking there. If you are using an AMD mount, this is when you might have to swap it for something else, but it does come with the Intel already firmly on there for now. One of the advantages of Intel being the dominant platform for as long as it has is that most of these water blocks have Intel pre-installed. That will probably be changing though as Ryzen becomes more and more dominant in the market space. So again, we're going to just drop that water block. Okay. Nice and firmly on there. I want to make sure we're doing it nice and even. Then at this point, we're going to be taking our guys that we took off the stand or the screws earlier. and just make sure that everything is in there. It's kind of this outer shell, the spring, there's a washer, and then the screw itself. So we'll put that on one of the corners, screw it on. Don't want to do it too tight on the first one yet. You want to make sure you kind of do it evenly, so you're not putting a lot of pressure on one side of the socket. Don't want to damage the CPU underneath. All right, then we're going to take our water fittings to be able to get the tubes on here. I just have some black compression fittings here that we're going to screw into place. Again, you're tightening it by hand. You don't need to like forcefully destroy things here. We can get this a little bit later on when we're going through this, but there is a dedicated in and out, just to be clear, on the block here. There is a dedicated inlet and outlet on the block, and it's denoted by the way the fins are on the CPU. So we're trying to get this cable kind of routed around the water block here, just to try and hide the cable as best as we can. This might have been something that might have been a little bit easier to do before you really tighten the screws, but you know, whatever. That's a hot tip for you. Okay, and so all we have is this little screw to hopefully reach the Commander Pro. At this point then, we'll take our RAM. We have our 4.6 here of Corsair Vengeance RAM. If you're only using 2.6, you want to make sure you have them in the right channels. But when you're doing all four, of course, it doesn't really matter. You're just kind of stacking them all in. You want to lift the make sure to, you want to line up the little notch right here with the notch on the motherboard RAM port. For this particular motherboard, only one side has the clicks. And of course you want to keep pushing it so you get a nice satisfying click sound. Okay, so we have the CPU installed with the water block on. We have the RAM installed as well. Next will be our M.2 slots, which will be for storage. So in my case, I'm using two different M.2s. I have, of course, the Samsung 970 EVO, but I also have this older Intel one as well. Both of these are a terabyte, but this is obviously the much faster option. So this is going to be my guy for my C drive. So I want to make sure I put that in the primary M.2 slot. And this will be kind of my secondary more for storage on board the computer itself. On this motherboard, we do have the main M.2 right here. So we're going to remove these screws. Have our M.2 drive here. We got our little baggie of the standoffs and screws. Obviously we're gonna put the standoff here on the specific hole. Oh boy, that'd be easier without the M.2 in it first. We'll screw the standoff in. Put the M.2 drive in there. And then, hopefully these are magnetic. They are. And we'll screw the M.2 drive right down. Okay. We'll put the M.2 bracket back on, match these screws up. I kind of wish I had two of these covers, because the other M.2 I have is like the green PCB. It looks kind of ugly, but whatever. So the main M.2 there. We have my other M.2 right here. Standoff in, we'll put the M.2 drive in right there. get our screw. Oh, is this one not magnetic? Huh. This one is weird. Okay. All right, so status update here. We have our CPU under the water block right there. We got our RAM installed here, M.2 under one here, M.2 of the other one here. So our motherboard is pretty much at this point ready to go. We'll clean up our little table here. Our big case here. And we are going to get some things installed. Inside the motherboard itself, the O11 by Lian Li already has pre-installed standoffs. So for most motherboards, you're probably going to be okay, but it doesn't hurt to check. On the motherboard, you do want to make sure you peel your I/O shield thing there first. We're going to line up this motherboard with the back. And we'll start screwing this bad boy in. Of course, again, we have dedicated screws here for the motherboard. I always like starting in this corner first. I feel like it kind of gets a good spot in. Okay. So, at this point, probably need to figure out what we're going to do for water cooling and exactly how we want to set this up. So, let's go ahead and open our pump, because I do have to kind of figure out exactly how this is going to work. So what we have here is the Corsair XD5 RGB pump and reservoir combo. You can see it comes in two pieces here, large pieces anyway. Check to see if there's anything else I need. Looks like we have a nice mount there for fans. Perhaps another one here. Get the manual out as well to make sure we know what the heck we're doing here. So I guess one of the most challenging things is going to be figuring out exactly what my layout is going to be. Maybe let's grab the radiator too. And of course we have the in and out in the radiator as well. So for this, we'll probably mount the radiator onto the back panel back here. We'll probably mount the pump reservoir onto the radiator as well. I think that'll probably be the best way to do this. Probably from the bottom. Oh, these fans don't fit on here. Well, that's a problem. These are not the right fans. These are 140 millimeter spacing. I have 120 millimeter fans. Oh boy. All right, let's see. Do I have any 140 millimeter fans? These look kind of big. Okay, so do I have two of these? That's 240, 140. So I do have 2 fans that could work. Oh man, this is terrible. It's gonna look so ugly for the first time I turn it on. The problem is here, the fans are 140 millimeter, when the fans that I had for my existing computer and was planning to use were only 120 millimeter. And so the fans I was going to mount on the radiator, the holes do not match. And so thankfully I had some spare 140 millimeter fans sitting around, 2 to be exact, so I'll at least be able to use this computer in the short term. We'll just take my existing 121s and mount up on the top. Okay, so we're gonna have blank radiator underneath. We're gonna have our fittings. And then the fans we want to pull, so we're going to flip the fans. We're going to pull, so we're going to have the no fans underneath. The fans are going to pull the air through the radiator and exhaust through the top of the fan. Oh no. This is just the worst computer build I've ever done in my life. As if things couldn't get worse, I thought I was finally good with the fan situation, and now I realized somehow I have to get a water outlet through that clearance, which clearly is not going to happen. So, my goodness, I have never had this much trouble with a computer before. I think we might have to invert it so that the tubes are maybe coming from here. So we'll have to do a long run out to the tube. No, so we'll do pump. We'll go out in here. This will have to go up and over to here, and then this one down into the reservoir. Good enough. That screw is pretty stripped, so don't want to force that guy. Okay, so we're sealing the hole in the back. We're not going to use that guy. We have it mounted here, so now we're going to mount it through our fan here. So this case will probably need some longer screws. We've plugged one of the holes in the top. This one is going to come from the radiator drains into the reservoir. We have the thermometer on one. We have plugged the other right side hole, plugged the back side hole. We've put then the compression fitting here. This will be on the out. So this will be coming out to my processor. Where we're at is we have the motherboard installed, CPU installed, water block installed, RAM installed, M.2 drives installed. The biggest thing now is we have the radiator mounted up on the top. It's pulling air up through the radiator. Not the most ideal, but with this case limitations that I've been coming across, and just some not great decisions on my part picking parts, that's where we're at. So we're going to do pump out and then kind of somehow loop it into here. That'll then come out to the radiator and then down right here down to the reservoir. So that's how we're gonna do the water cooling. So that'll be our next step, is tubing. Exciting. Bring the computer over to its home with all of its guts hanging out, just in case something is still not right. Let's plug in our motherboard cable, plug in our graphics card. Where's the power button at? Where's the power button? Well, we have things lighting up. Things are presumably booting. Give me something, please. Give me something. Hey, we got a boot. New CPU installed. We got Z490, i9 10900K. 5 keyboards, 4 mice, sure. M.2 Intel, M.2 Samsung. Okay. Total memory, 32 gigs. We booted. I have no fans spinning, but that's okay. We booted. Ooh, there's the pretty colors. Got some awful fan noises. Look at the colors though, holy cow. Need to boot, and let me go into BIOS. Cool.